The Radical. Fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome. Welcome to Yaron Brook Show on this Monday night, Monday afternoon, Monday night, depending on where you are. Maybe Monday morning, or Tuesday morning if you're out in Europe. I hope everybody is doing well and having a good start for your week. All right, I apologize about yesterday. I was planning to do a show, didn't quite work out in terms of timing and everything else. But here I am today. We'll do today, we'll do tomorrow, we'll do Thursday. So 3 shows this week, today, tomorrow, Thursday. Tomorrow we will be doing a Super Chat match. We'll have a match up to $1,000. So don't forget tomorrow to bring your checkbooks. And we'll have a fun time, do a telethon, marathon. We'll raise at least $1,000. I've got a supporter who's willing to match every dollar up to $1,000. So thanks. Frank was worried about my toothache. Yeah, I need a root canal. So that's the bottom line. I went to the dentist today, and basically we're trying to schedule a root canal for later this week. So I assume later this week I'll get a root canal. Tooth is a little better because I've been taking penicillin antibiotics for the last few days. So I've been feeling better because of that. But I think it reduces swelling, reduces the infection. But hopefully we'll get the root canal. We'll get it over with. Hopefully it won't be on the Thursday, so I don't have to cancel that show. Hopefully we'll do it on Friday, and I'll be all recovered by the time we have to do the show on Saturday. It's got nothing to do with sugar. It's got to do with what can I say? It's got to do with age. And I did eat a lot of sugar when I was young. Sugar was a staple food in our household when I was growing up. My teeth are rotten. I mean, they're rotten to the core, but even though I haven't been eating sugar for 20 years, almost 20 years, or very little sugar for 20 years, teeth are bad. But once you get to a certain age, it doesn't matter what you've eaten. Just stuff starts falling apart. Mouthy. No, toothache happened well before mouthy. Mouthy didn't affect it. Mouthy actually did the mouthy debate while under the treatment of drugs to reduce the pain. So, all right. I hope you all enjoyed the debate on Saturday night with mouthy. It was a little, I don't know what the right word is, but I find it difficult to. To debate kids who are younger than my kids, but so be it. I thought he was a good kid. I thought he was well prepared. He'd done his homework. He had all his studies lined up. He had a lot of material ready to go. So I give him credit for all of that. I think he's very misguided. I think he's got the wrong ethics. I think he's got the wrong. He doesn't have enough. He needs to do more in terms of analyzing the stats to figure out what studies are valuable and what are not. Many of the ones he was citing were questionable at best. I will be putting up that debate up on my website on Wednesday. So Wednesday afternoon, we'll have that debate up on the site for you all. All right, so tomorrow. We've got we've got a show, and then Thursday we've got a show. I will be today catching up on the Super Chat questions that I didn't get to on Saturday. I have a feeling tonight's going to be a long night. Of course, you're encouraged to ask more Super Chat questions today, and as always, Super Chat questions that have more than $20 associated with them get a significant priority in answering. They will be answered even before the questions from Saturday. So the goal today, as always, is to raise $400. That's kind of the standard. Tomorrow there will be a Super Chat match of anything up to $1,000. So hopefully you will bring your checkbooks tomorrow, and we will make it up to $1,000. All right, tonight we have a super depressing story about the state of our culture, as if anytime we talk about the culture, it's not super depressing. All the cultural stories about our culture are super depressing. And it has to do really with the state of our high schools, really our schools more generally. But I've got a number of stories coming out of kind of the world of particularly elite schools, but also public schools. It is really, really troublesome, and it's interesting because, for decades now, schools have been overwhelmingly anti-capitalist. I mean, particularly the elite schools, private schools, have been dominantly anti-capitalist and to a large extent anti-American. Some of the most used textbooks on things like history have been approaching history from a Marxist perspective, teaching American history from a Marxist perspective, and therefore teaching falsehoods and lies. But not only that, the way 19th century is taught with a de-emphasis on the rising standard of living, the increase in life expectancy, the increase in quality of life, the increase in wealth, all of that is de-emphasized and not accounted for, and the emphasis is on, child labor and on pollution and on all the ugliness that they can dredge up without any focus on this as being maybe the most important, from a material perspective, maybe the most important period in all of human history in terms of the shift from poverty to wealth. And schools have been like this forever. This is a long-term trend. This is true 20 years ago, even worse, 20, 30, 40 years ago. Even worse, for the last 30 years, at least. Environmentalism has been taught as gospel. Environmentalism is taught as gospel at the schools. I remember fighting with my kids' Montessori teachers. This is in the early 90s, about how environmentalism was being taught as if it was just fact and without any challenges. And this is about climate change in the early 90s. It was already climate change. It was already focused, back then on penguins dying because of global warming. And you had to fight that battle 30 years ago. Now, today, environmentalism, nobody challenges, just accept the truth, and the kids are completely indoctrinated. When it comes to anti-capitalism, we've got a whole generation that thinks socialism is kind of cool, and Bernie Sanders is God's gift to American politics. And I actually did an interview today with a young college student. She's doing a project about Venezuela and about Venezuela and socialism, to try to combat the accepted rhetoric among her friends, among her classmates, which is that socialism is great. And she told me, her generation, it's standard to think that socialism is cool. And this is just accepted. It's given. Nobody challenges, nobody questions it. The anti-capitalism, anti-production, anti-growth, anti-wealth, anti-Western civilization, that's an old trend. Really anti-achievement. These have all been now institutionalized. The left has basically won completely, without question. And in a sense, it is over, right? It is over. Well, it's not over, because then kids go to college and they get corrupted even further. And then maybe they get a job, and then maybe they start reading, and maybe they discover my YouTube channel and their eyes are opened up to alternative ideas, right? I mean, that's the path. That's the path some of you have gone through. You were exposed to all this stuff, and you were exposed to all this garbage in high school and college, and then you discovered better ideas, whether you discovered Ayn Rand, whether you discovered certain other writers or scholars, and obviously you discovered my show at some point, and you've made the correction. You made the adjustment. Somebody is asking about 1999. Look, if you do 1999, I count it as 20. So don't worry about it. I'll treat it like it's a $20 question. I know that some apps make it difficult to do 20. They only do $9.99, $19.99, things like that. So just do the $19.99, and I will treat it as if it was 20. There are some schools that have been better over the years, private schools, but most private schools, the high school my kids went to, private high school my kids went to, was steeped in leftist ideology. But there now seems to be a backlash, and it's interesting. They seem to, at least for some parents and some commentators, it seems that they have gone too far. Because the in thing now for the schools to preach, to indoctrinate, is critical race theory, white fragility, basically the racist leftist agenda that is so prevalent out there. Among, kind of certain types of academics. It's not really prevalent out there. I don't think many people believe in any of that crap. But at least for some people, it's prevalent out there. Michael, thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed the debate on Saturday. And I will get to your question once I finish my rant. So about a month ago, actually, when was this published? I think it was about a month ago. Many people send me this article by Barry Weiss. Now, Barry Weiss, somebody I've recommended to you in the past. She is a former former columnist at the New York Times. She resigned, let go from the New York Times a while back, and she wrote a very moving piece when she left the New York Times about the kind of politically correct culture within the Times and why she was leaving. She has since created a Substack. A Substack I generally recommend, Barry Weiss's Substack. I think it's very good. With the goal of, she wrote today in a Substack, her goal is to create the most interesting opinion page in America. So to outdo the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, and any other newspaper in terms of the quality of the opinion pages. So she publishes a lot of commentary. She's probably, center left, center right, hard to tell on different issues. I think it's going to be different. Generally, these people tend to be, for a little bit of capitalism, but not too much, but better on the kind of cultural issues. But a month ago, she wrote an article, many of you sent it to me, called The Miseducation of American Elites, focused on what is happening at some of the most prestigious high schools, and schools generally, not just high schools, in the United States. She focused on schools in Los Angeles and in New York. She talked to teachers, and to parents and to students at some of these schools. Schools in which students are afraid to speak up in class. Schools in which the agenda is what is called an anti-racist agenda, and I've talked in the past about the fact that anti-racism, as practiced by these people, is the essence of racism. Anti-racism is the new racism. And that this curriculum, everything that's being taught, is making kids fixate on race and attach importance to it in astounding and scary ways. In other words, we have a generation of administrators and teachers today in American high schools in particular in the most prestigious of them, in places like, West LA, Beverly Hills, Brentwood, and Manhattan, where the elites send their kids, particularly in those schools, where they are training them to be racists, training them and indoctrinating them to bear collective racial guilt if they're white, and collective racial victimhood if they're non-white. Parents are complaining that these schools are making their children feel, quote, like a racist because of the pigmentation of his skin. One of the reasons parents are tolerating this is they're afraid to be blacklisted. If they're blacklisted, that'll place their child at risk from being accepted to colleges like Harvard, Ivy League universities. Remember, these schools are prep schools. They're prepping the kids for college. And they are preparing them, and they have connections at these colleges. So people are very, very afraid to speak up, right? They fear social shaming, the kids do. They fear not being able to get into the school of their choice. Some of them are afraid of other kids, in terms of, in a sense, being bullied, being called a racist, just for speaking out and saying, the color of my skin does not determine me. They think that one bad statement, one misinterpreted line, is going to deny them the ability to go to the university of their choice. Teachers are doing seminars in white fragility and critical race theory so that they can convey these ideas to the kids. And of course, the teachers are afraid to speak up. We'll talk about a teacher who spoke up in a few minutes. And now instead of teaching Shakespeare, we've got teachers becoming experts in critical race theory. God forbid you teach Shakespeare. After all, last I heard, he had white skin. Thank you, Vlad. That is very generous. Appreciate it. There is a constant discussion about social justice, but to allow anybody to voice opposing views or different perspectives is frowned upon. Those people are silenced. So, let me just take this question by Red Pond because it relates to what I'm talking about. And I've actually answered this question before, but it's an interesting question, so it's worth repeating. Do you think this new religion of anti-racism is M2 from the dim hypothesis, or D2 all the way? So it could appear to be an M2 because it is like a religion. It has dogma. It has organizing structure, right, around supposedly race and hierarchy and sin, and it all seems like it's an ideology that has a misintegration. The misintegration is around race. But I don't think it is a sustainable aim to, because race doesn't exist. And what happens to critical theory is that even critical race theory starts disintegrating. And it's interesting. It takes the form of disintegration into disintegrating the units. So the unit is not anymore race. It's race plus gender. And of course, gender is not a unit anymore, because it turns out there are 94 different genders, we are told. So now you have all these different genders and race, and all this different gender and race, and sexuality to the extent that's different than gender, and anything else that well, sexuality is different, I guess, because you could be you could be gay, you can be straight, you can be bi, you can be, I guess, trans. I don't know. It gets too complicated for my simple mind to grapple with. And then there's a whole hierarchy of the relationship between all these groups and who's more oppressed than others. And of course, there's religion or lack of religion or whatever. And it quickly disintegrates into little small units, and there's nothing really to integrate it except victimhood. And that can't be an integrating principle, indeed. It's a disintegrating principle. It's a principle that drives everybody to kind of an endless, non-stop competition about who is the bigger victim, who is suffering the most. So at least by my understanding, which granted is limited, I think critical race theory is a D2. And also, if you think about its purpose is not to form some kind of cohesive ideology that everybody can embrace and strive towards a cohesive end. There is no end here. The end for these people is destruction. It's nothing but destruction. In that sense, these people are the true nihilists. It's not that they want to elevate minorities. It's they want to pull down anybody who happens to have white skin, or anybody who they don't like. Like, I don't know, if you happen to be heterosexual, or if you happen to identify as, well, no, let me just say it. If you happen to be, if you're allowed to say this even, male, or be female. God, if you're white and male and heterosexual, they want to pull you down. They want to destroy you. They want you to leave the campus like in Evergreen College. So it's more about egalitarianism, which I think is fundamentally a D2 ideology. There's no there. There's nothing. There's no God or heaven or utopia or some vision. I mean, there's no. I have a dream about a colorblind society. It's exact opposite. Their dream is basically whites groveling. Well, whites, heterosexual males groveling before white heterosexual females who are groveling before white heterosexual lesbians who are groveling before black heterosexual lesbians, and you can go on and on and on in the hierarchy and pyramid of victimhood or implied victimhood. And this is what this leads to. Intersectionality is the name of that, right? And that was, you see less being written about that, but that's at the heart of all of this. So no, this is a disintegrated philosophy, a philosophy that gives you no cognitive tools to deal with reality. To deal with reality. They are about destruction as a primary. Now, what's stunning about these ideas in the high schools, right, is they're going after, in a sense, the most influential. They're going after kids getting a high school education at $50,000 a year. They're going up to the top of success for the parents. and inflicting massive amounts of guilt on the children. And it works because the children didn't earn the wealth. The children don't know where the wealth came from. The children are the beneficiaries of wealth that wasn't theirs. Right. You know, there's one of the schools, the Grace Church School in Manhattan. Grace Church, this is a religious school of all things, has a 12-page guide to inclusive language. It discourages people from using the word parents because some kids might not have parents. So nobody should have parents. Folks is preferred. Or from asking questions like, what religion are you? Right. And I had a whole table somewhere here of the kind of words that are allowed and not allowed to say. Oh, it was in the other article. I haven't opened that up. One second. Let me find that. You know, the kind of words that it's okay to use. Right? Let me do this. That was not good. This way. That way it opens up. Yeah. Let me find it. Where's that table? Oh, there we go. All right, mom and dad. Call them grown-ups, folks, or family. Parents, grown-ups, folks, family, or guardians. Nanny babysitter is a caregiver guardian. Is adopted, was adopted, that one I'm not sure. Right? Instead of saying husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, say spouse, partner, significant other. They just want to rewrite the English language. What religion are you? You shouldn't ask that. You should ask, are any religious faith traditions important to you? I guess, what religion are you? Too much pressure on you. Oh my God, what religion am I? What did you get for Christmas? What are you going to be for Halloween? You should say, do you celebrate holidays? Merry Christmas is have a great break. Where did you go from break? Anyway, it goes on like this. Everyone has, some people have, don't make generalizations generally. Boys and girls, guys, ladies and gentlemen, you should say people, folk, friends, readers, mathematicians. Mathematicians. What if they're not? And on, and on, and on, and on. You don't say diverse minority. You say person of color. Yes, let's emphasize that color. God forbid you become colorblind. Person of color. Or you can also use marginalized identity. So make them a victim right off the bat. Not minority, yeah, this in a smaller group than the rest. No, marginalized group. Marginalized group. Aye. And on and on and on he goes. There's some great graphs here. Let me see if I can find them. Yeah, maybe it was in a different article. So anyway, you know, this is what they're teaching at these very exclusive schools that are very difficult to get into. An English teacher at Harvard Westlake, which is in California, when they came back from summer, the teacher said, this is her introduction to the class, I am a queer white wompson. You're not supposed to say woman. You're supposed to say wompson. I have no idea what that's about. Somebody will have to educate me in one of those re-education camps. Of European descent. I use she, her pronouns, but also feel comfortable using they, them pronouns. This pronoun stuff is really, really, really spooky. It reminds me of Anthem, Ayn Rand's novelette, Anthem, where nobody could say I. Everything was we. At the best prep schools in America today, woke culture, woke language, woke mentality, woke guilt is just accepted. It's just standard. And if you don't participate, beware. Our students today, high school students today, are being, educated in resentment and fear and guilt. You either are a victim or an oppressor. There's no such thing as as in God's oath. Neither sacrifice my life to others or others to myself. No, you're either a sacrificer or being sacrificed. There is no alternative. Right? They don't call Newton's laws anymore. Because, hey, that's too individualistic. It's just laws of the universe, fundamental laws of physics. I mean, really, we really have to get away from this white-centric view of science. In U.S. history class, they don't learn about U.S. history, period by period, cause and effect, what happened, names of presidents, I don't know. No, instead they trace different marginalized groups and see how the oppression was structured and how they were treated and how they were victims. Some schools, like Bredenwood, another school in California, held racially segregated dialogue and community building sessions. And it just goes on and on. You know, Ibram Kendi, the author of How to Be an Anti-Racist, who's a racist, is worshipped in these programs. And I did a whole show on him last summer, so if you're interested, you can go back and find my show on anti-racism. Oh, here it is. I knew there was the pyramid of racism, right? So you help establish a foundation for racism. If you say things like, there are two sides to every story, or not all white people fill in the blank, that's the beginning of racism. That's the foundation. Right? If you don't accept white people or if you say something like, it's just a joke. Or if you say, but my black friend said. Or if you say there's a post-racial society. There could be a post-racial society. No, you're already laying the foundation for racism if you accept any of those terms. You're basically laying the foundation to what's at the top of the pyramid, which is genocide. So be careful. Why can't we all just get along, for example, which I hate that term, but why can't we just get along is basically laying the foundation for genocide. Right. And you can go, I mean, it's just, white girl came home, one of the lower grades, so this is a primary school, came home one day and told their father, quote, all people with lighter skin don't like people with dark skin and are mean to them. I mean, her father was horrified. Did he go to school to complain? Probably not. Cowards. Even when, people raise their hand to ask questions in class, if you're white and male, back of the line. You get to ask a question last. Maybe I should institute that on the Super Chat. You should identify your race and your intersectionality score so that I can decide how to rank you in terms of whether I will answer your question or not. Forget dollars. We'll do it by intersectionality score. No, let's use dollars. I like dollars. Much better. Another mother confided that the son said to her, Mom, I just found out I'm a racist and I prefer white Europeans. Her child is a mixed race because he did one of these, what do you call them, implicit bias tests. And the implicit bias test told him, even though he's a mixed race kid, that he is a racist who prefers whites. Or when parents complain, they're told they can't understand the issue because their skin is white. So stop complaining. And of course, all these kids say that all this does is make them think about race more. And they lie to their teachers in order to mouth the theory, even if they don't believe it. But some of it gets sunk in. And some of it has the opposite effect, which I've always claimed. The more the minority racists, the more the anti-racist racists get stronger, the more they get stronger, the more the white racists will get stronger. The more reason they give the white racists to get stronger. So Joey says he's a black, atheist, Jewish, male objectivist. Wait a minute, I don't think that's possible. How can you be a black, atheist, Jewish objectivist? Male, okay. I don't know. I think actually being an objectivist we're the most underrepresented group. We have no representation anyway. Nobody we're discriminated against all the time. I think that should put us in the lowest. Then if you're black and an objectivist, oh my God, you're super intersectional. And if you're black and Jewish and an atheist and an objectivist, yeah, I mean, you needed to be trans. Joe, if you were trans, you would win the ultimate intersectionality battle. Trans who identified as, there has to be something there that would make it, yeah. I don't know if 20, is that bad? 28 is old, I think, right? Or is that young? Or is that, I don't know. I don't know if how age factors into it. Ageism. Now notice all this happening in the background. Where public schools, these private schools are all open. Public schools are closed. Now some of you might say, well, that's good because public school is so bad. Well, for many of these kids, even public schools is better than being at home. Public schools save many of these kids. We might think that public schools are an awful education, and they are relative to the alternatives that we know exist. But for many people, these are the best opportunities they have. Thank you, Joe. Public schools are closed. A lot of black kids in poor neighborhoods are stuck at home not learning anything. Stuck at home in very unpleasant, often family environments. That's a problem that needs to be dealt with. And at the same time, you've got rich kids going to very expensive schools being taught this garbage. But these rich kids are going to be the intellectuals, the politicians, the business leaders of the future. I mean, some of them at least. They're going to go to good schools, have good connections. Many of them are ambitious. And yet, a school like Dalton, another one of these prep schools, is committed to being visibly, vocally, and structurally anti-racist. And corporations are getting into the act, as we know. Bain & Company, one of the leading consulting firms in the world, has tweeted about Wumpsons. How many of you are Wumpsons? Am I a Melksons? Is this, I don't know how this works. Wumpsons. How do you get to change the spelling of words? What is required? What's the precondition for that? Anyway, Wumpsons History Month. The Cartoon Network is imploring children to see color. Skin color. Wumpsons is WOMXN. And Coca-Cola employees were recently instructed to be less white. I don't think I can be less white. Now, this is in the top schools. Remember the public schools in San Francisco changing the names of their schools, taking away Abraham Lincoln because he was a racist somehow? The name. They've reversed, by the way, and we'll talk about the backlash against all of this. High school teachers encouraged or told, not encouraged, to stop teaching Kill a Mockingbird or Mice and Men. Public schools are not immune to this, I'd say nonsense, but it's worse than nonsense, this evil. Now, this is the consequence. This is the consequence of the left's dominance of our intellectual institutions that is now filtered down to high schools, it was inevitable. It always does. The Marxism, the anti-capitalism has been filtering down to our high schools for decades. And nothing was done about it. The altruism, the collectivism has been trickling down to our schools for decades, maybe a century, and nothing's been done about it. No opposition. Certainly no intellectual opposition. Now, it's about race. Now it's about the most barbaric form of all collectivism. The most disgusting form of all altruism. You should feel guilty for the color of your skin. You should feel like a victim because of the color of your skin. You owe somebody because they're a victim somehow and you're an oppressor somehow. Divorced from your independent action. All attributable to the color of your skin. All attributable to the group that you belong to. This is the consequence of collectivism going unchallenged by left and right for generations. Nobody has talked against the collectivists. And even if they have or tried to, in the name of what? What alternative is they presented? With the exception of Ayn Rand, there is no individualist movement in America. It's not like conservatives are individualists. Republicans are individualists. They're just collectivists of a form that is slightly more appealing to us. Partially because they're more linked to tradition. And the tradition in America has been pretty good, so they're linked to something that's pretty good. Not because they believe it, not because they understand it, not because they embrace it, but because it's tradition. When this collectivism goes unchallenged, then what you get is the rise, the growth, the entrenchment of barbaric ideologies. And that's what we're seeing. Barbarism in our high schools, and in our best high schools, in the high schools that people are paying $50,000 a year to go to get this. Now, because it has become so self-evident, so obvious, so in your face, and because this goes beyond just criticizing capitalism, which everybody supports, nobody's against that, but now deals with one of the things that people care about, which is their individual identity. Because the majority in this country are being called racists because of the color of their skin. People are starting to speak up. People are starting to object. Indeed, the city of San Francisco has reversed its decision about renaming the schools, at least for now, because of the backlash that they got. Barry Weiss, a few days ago, over the last few days, has published two, I think, important letters that go to the heart of this. The first is by a teacher. And the title of the essay is, "I refuse to stand by while my students are indoctrinated. Children are afraid to challenge the repressive ideology that rules our schools. That's why I am." Now you'll notice, sadly, that even though these individuals speak up, identify clear evils in the approach of those trying to indoctrinate our children, they don't really have an answer. They don't provide an alternative lens, an alternative view of the world, an alternative way to integrate what we see around us. And that's why I fear that in spite of the fact that there's now opposition, I don't know how long it can last. Because it provides an alternative, and of course, that only opens it up for, if we go back to the dim hypothesis, for the alternative to be some misintegration on a large scale, an M2, that will lead us directly into authoritarianism. Just so we can avoid the complete fragmentation of our society caused by this nonsense being taught in our schools. So this is a letter from a teacher at Grace Church High School in Manhattan. Grace Church, it's a religious school, dominated, but very, very leftist. He writes, "My school is asking me to embrace anti-racism training and pedagogy that I believe is deeply harmful to them, to the students, and to any person who seeks to nurture the virtues of curiosity, empathy, and understanding." What does this anti-racism training require? It requires teachers like myself, he writes, to treat students differently on the basis of race. It requires them to be racists, because that's what racism means, treating people differently based on their race. Furthermore, in order to maintain a united front for our students, teachers at Grace are directed to confine our doubts about this pedagogical framework to conversations with an in-house, listen to this, Office of Community Engagement. As you read this, if you know a little bit of history, think about how different or the same this is with Mao's Cultural Revolution. The teacher writes, "My school, like many others, induces students by shame and sophistry to identify primarily with their race before their individual identities are fully formed. Students are pressured to conform their opinions to those broadly associated with their race and gender, and to minimize or dismiss individual experiences that don't match those assumptions. The morally compromised status of oppressor is assigned to one group of students based on the immutable, color of their skin, characteristics. In the meantime, dependency, resentment, and moral superiority are cultivated in students considered oppressed, from each according to his ability, to each according to his needs." The oppressor, the oppressed. All this, of course, is done in the name of equity, the new catchphrase for the left. So this teacher recently raised questions about this ideology in a mandatory whites-only students and faculty Zoom. Can you imagine having a whites-only meeting? Like whites-only bathrooms, whites-only beaches? Disgusting. It's just so mindlessly primitive and barbaric. It doesn't, I mean, what strikes me, it makes me so angry, is it doesn't really justify comment. Why do we need to be commenting on this? Why do we need to be discussing this? Racism, since the 1960s, has been identified as evil. And these people are embracing it wholeheartedly with a moral superiority that is just disgusting. Now, it turned out that this meeting by Zoom for white only was a bait and switch self-care seminar labeled objectivity, individualism, fear of open conflict, and even a right to comfort as characteristics of white supremacy. Individualism is characteristic of white supremacy. And, you know, we can go on and on. Anyway, the teacher, after he confronted this and challenged some of these assumptions, was informed by the head of high school that his philosophical challenges had caused harm to students, given that these topics were life and death matters about people's flesh and blood and bone. He was reprimanded for acting like an independent agent, God forbid, of a set of principles or ideas of belief. He was told that by doing so, he failed to serve, quote, the greater good and the higher truth. He created dissonance for vulnerable and uninformed thinkers and neurological disturbance in students. It was borderline. What he did constituted harassment. Why? Because he challenged the authorities. He challenged the perspective of the new little intellectual dictators. A public reprimand. This is so Chinese Cultural Revolution. A public reprimand was then read aloud in all the classes about this teacher's conduct. He then had to, anyway, by writing this article, by pointing all this out, right? Pointing all this out, he committed a sin. He challenged the authorities. He's being told to work at home now. Can't come into the school. Because he poses a threat to his students. Or people that pose the threats against him. So he is a security threat. They won't fire him, they say. But they've asked him to teach from home using Zoom. Last year at Grace, this religious school, the students asked for some diversity of points of view. And the teacher thought of bringing in Glenn Loury, a Brown University professor and public intellectual. You might know him. He's very good. Who is black, but who is, I'd say, center-right or kind of a nuanced thinker. He thinks. Wow, what a concept. The head of school banned it. Quote, this is the quote, the head of my school. People like Lowry's lived experience, and therefore his derived social philosophy. Notice that the only way he can have an idea is because he lived it. He can't actually develop an idea. Made him an exception to the rule that black thinkers acknowledge structural racism as the paramount impediment in society. In other words, Lowry didn't come to the conclusion that structural racism doesn't exist. His shared experiences, his lived experience, shaped him to have that view. No free will, no self-determination. The headmaster, the head of school, added, the moment we are in institutionally and culturally does not lend itself to dispassionate discussion and debate. And having Lowry's ideas would only confuse or inflame students, both those in the class and others that hear about it outside class. He preferred to assign mainstream white conservative than having a black conservative, because that's too confusing. Black and conservative, it's like black and objective. I mean, you can't do that. An objectivist, that's not allowed. Notice how they want everything to be about race. They want everything to be about skin color. They want you to feel guilty for being white. They want you deep, and they want you to go deep in feeling a victim because you're not white. I mean, these kids are being trained to be racist under the guise of a fantastic, superior private education. Finally, yesterday, I think it was, a parent spoke up. And this is an excellent, excellent, excellent essay that I encourage you all to read. Barry Weiss published it. It is called A New York Father Pulls His Daughter Out of Brearley with a Message to the Whole School. It is, Barry Weiss published it, so it's on her Substack, barryweiss.substack.com. It's excellent. If parents did this, this problem would be gone. I'm going to read some of this letter to you. And he's writing this to the parents. This is a parent of a student. Dear fellow Brearley parents, our family recently made the decision not to re-enroll our daughter at Brearley for the 2021-22 school year. She has been at Brearley for 7 years, beginning in kindergarten. In short, we no longer believe that Brearley administration and board of trustees have any of our children's best interest at heart. Moreover, we no longer have confidence that our daughter will receive the quality of education necessary to further her development into critically thinking, responsible, enlightened, and civic-minded adult. I write to you as a fellow parent to share our reasons for leaving the Brearley community. It cannot be stated strongly enough that Brearley's obsession with race must stop. Brearley is a $54,000 a year all-girls school. $54,000. It should be abundantly clear to any thinking parent that Brearley has completely lost its way. The administration and board of trustees have displayed a cowardly and appalling lack of leadership by appeasing an anti-intellectual, illiberal mob and then allowing the school to be captured by that same mob. What follows are my own personal views on Brearley anti-racism initiatives, but these are just a handful of criticisms that I know other parents have expressed. This is really well written, really hard-hitting, really spot on. I object to the view that I should be judged by the color of my skin. This is what people need to say. This is how people need to rise up. I cannot tolerate a school that not only judges my daughter by the color of her skin, but encourages and instructs her to prejudge others by theirs. By viewing every element of education, every aspect of history, and every facet of society through the lens of skin color and race, we are desecrating the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King and utterly violating the movement for which such civil rights leaders believed, fought, and died. I object to the charge of systemic racism in this country and at our school. Systemic racism, properly understood, is segregated schools and separate lunch counters. It is the interning of Japanese and the exterminating of Jews. Systemic racism is unequivocally not a small number of isolated incidents over a period of decades. Ask any girl of any race if they have ever experienced insults from friends. Of course they have. Have ever felt slighted by teachers, or have ever suffered the occasional injustice from a school at which they have spent up to 13 years of their life. And you are bound to hear grievances, some petty, some not. We have not had systemic racism against blacks in this country since the civil rights reforms of the 1960s, a period of more than 50 years. To state otherwise is a flat-out misrepresentation of our country's history and adds no understanding to any of today's societal issues. If anything, long-standing and widespread policies, such as affirmative action, point in precisely the opposite direction. This is good stuff. I object to a definition of systemic racism, apparently supported by Brearley, that any educational, professional, or societal outcome where blacks are underrepresented is prima facie evidence of the aforementioned systemic racism or of white supremacy and oppression. Good for him. Facile and unsupported beliefs such as these are the polar opposite to the intellectual and scientific truth for which Brearley claims to stand. Furthermore, I call bullshit on Brearley's oft-stated assertion that the school welcomes and encourages the truly difficult and uncomfortable conversations regarding race and the roots of racial disparities. I object to the idea that blacks are unable to succeed in this country without aid from government or from whites. Brearley, by adopting critical race theory, is advocating the abhorrent viewpoint that blacks should forever be regarded as helpless victims and are incapable of success regardless of their skills, talents, or hard work. What Brearley is teaching our children is precisely the true and correct definition of racism. In other words, Brearley is teaching racism. Scott says, why isn't objectivism coming out with such strong language? What if have I been doing for the last year? God. Let's see. Let me just, I'm just looking through the letter. I don't want to read the whole letter to you. You should actually get it yourself. We have today in our country, from both political parties and all levels of government, the most unwise and unvirtuous leaders in our nation's history. Amen. Schools like Brearley are supposed to be training grounds for those leaders. Our nation will not survive a generation of leadership even more poorly educated than we have now. Nor will we survive a generation of students taught to hate its own country and despise its history. Lastly, I object that the school is now fostering an environment where our daughters and our daughters' teachers are afraid to speak their mind in class for fear of, quote, consequences. I object that Brearley is trying to usurp the role of parents in teaching morality and bullying parents to adopt that false morality at home. I object that Brearley is fostering a divisive community where families of different races, which until recently were part of the same community, are now segregated into two. These are the reasons why we can no longer send our daughter to Brearley. Over the past several months, I've personally spoken to many Brearley parents, as well as parents of children at peer institutions. It is abundantly clear that the majority of parents believe that Brearley's anti-racist policies are misguided, divisive, counterproductive, and cancerous. Many believe, as I do, that these policies will ultimately destroy what was until recently a wonderful educational institution. But as I am sure will come as no surprise to you, given the insidious cancel culture that as of late permeated our society, most parents are too fearful to speak up. But speak up you must. There is strength in numbers, and I assure you, the numbers are there. Contact the administration and board of trustees and demand an end to the destructive and anti-intellectual claptrap known as anti-racism. And if changes are not forthcoming, then demand new leadership for the sake of our community, our city, our country, and most of all, our children. Silence is no longer an option. Now, this is an amazingly well-written letter. It's written by Andrew Gutman. I recommend it. Unfortunately, he attacks and attacks and attacks. It would be nice, again, to have a positive. Something about individualism, treating people as individuals. But that, I guess, is too much to ask. But this is amazing. His name is Andrew Gutman, Gutmann. Let me see. I'm going to post a link in the chat to the letter. I will also add it to the description underneath. I generally, strongly, highly recommend that you subscribe to Barry Weiss's Substack, which you can Google Barry Weiss Substack. But here's the link. It's on Barry Weiss Substack. But subscribe, and then you'll get all these good stuff. She's really good. You're not going to agree with a lot of what she writes, but a lot of it you will. And she's going to publish a lot of stuff on this kind of educational issues. So I think it's incredibly, incredibly valuable. Andrew asked an important question, so even though it's $20, not $20, I'll answer it. How do you counter the argument that underrepresentation is prima facie racism that's always raised by anti-racism? Well, it's not prima facie racism. You need evidence to suggest that it's racism. Now, it is true that underrepresentation is partially, to some extent, a consequence of past racism. You know, you can just run the calculation of the inability of black families to accumulate capital because of things like redlining and lack of ability to buy a house and mortgages and so on in the past. But, okay, that's 50 years ago. Redlining is gone, doesn't exist anymore. You can't raise the issue of culture. Maybe black culture is not good. Maybe they have the wrong role models. Maybe their intellectuals are teaching them the wrong message. Maybe the message of victimhood is actually damaging to them. But you have to raise those issues. But the real question is, why don't individuals succeed? And maybe it's because they have lousy schools. Now, do they have lousy schools because of racism? Or because of the way public education is funded? Or because of the way public education is provided? The way incentive structures are built into public education, where there is no real incentive to there's no real incentive to what? Where there's no incentive to provide great education because of the way public schools are structured. Erling, note, Yaron, you have to fix the input on your support page where you enter the amount. I cannot choose my preferred amount of dollars to send you, and I want to give you as much as I possibly can. Well, choose the next closest amount. The next closest amount. And then let's say you want to give me $60. You can do 50, you can do two sums, 150, 110. I am constrained by PayPal and by whoever provides that particular page, so it's difficult to give you the full flexibility. Whereas Daniel says, I'm broke tonight. I just purchased some Dogecoin as a Vegas gamble. Look, Daniel, here I'm being serious here now. Tomorrow is a $1,000 match. You better sell that Dogecoin, whatever it's called. By tomorrow, so you can participate in the match, so we can get to $1,000 tomorrow. I accept no excuses from Daniel. Brad, thank you. That is very generous. I really appreciate it. I think we're very close to I think we've crossed the $400 mark for tonight. So really appreciate you guys doing that. Remember, tomorrow you got to come again with the big bucks because we're shooting for $1,000 tomorrow. All right, let's see. Let me just make. So. Erling, you have to. I just responded to that. Erling, I just responded. Thank you for the 200 Norwegian krona. I think that's true. I just responded to that, but drop me an email, yaron@yaronbookshow.com. Let me know what level is missing, and I'll instruct my people to add that level so that you can make as big of a contribution as you can. There he goes, Daniel. That's much better. That is much, much better. Tomorrow is a $1,000 match. John has given us a $1,000 challenge for tomorrow. So tomorrow's the day. Tomorrow is the day. All right. Let's see. What do I want to do here? We've got Super Chat questions. We are not going to overcome these issues. We're not going to beat the left and the right until we are strong advocates for individualism. We are strong advocates for freedom. We're strong advocates for reason. And reason is the faculty of the individual, not color of your skin, but of you, the choices you make. Strong advocates of free will. That's at the core of what the good stands for. Free will, reason, individualism, freedom, capitalism. And we need to be aggressively advocating those ideas. aggressively fighting for those ideas. Not just complaining about the bad ideas on the left and right, but advocating for the good ideas. All right. All right, let's take this $50 question first from Michael, and then we'll go to the $20 questions, and then we'll start at the beginning, yesterday's questions, and go over all the non-$20 questions from yesterday. Where is it? Do you think most people's epistemology is so jumbled, whenever they hear a reality-based explanation, it does not register as anything significant? They see logic as a subjective game, detached from reality because everyone has their own reality. There's certainly a sense in which I think some smarter people think that way. When you connect stuff to reality for them, which is what logic really necessitates, is the connection of your abstract ideas to reality, it doesn't compute for them. For them, logic is a mind game. It's a game of manipulating symbols and concepts, which to them are just symbols. And it has nothing to do with reality, which, according to Kant and Donald Hoffman, as we discussed, it's not even clear that it exists. Or that maybe it exists, but we certainly don't know what it is. I mean, the whole point of critical race theory is, since there is no objective reality, I mean, this comes straight out of postmodernism, Kantianism, really. There is no connection between you and reality. And therefore, as Kant would tell you, because you see reality with eyes, you see a distorted reality. You see reality filtered through your own eyes and your own mind and your own structure, brain, of your brain. And since we have different color skin, the reality is filtered differently for white people and black people. And therefore, it cannot be the same reality. And notice how this leads to disintegration, because at the end of the day, each one of us is different, and therefore each one of us has a different mind, each one of us has a different reality, and therefore we have nothing in common. You know, the critical race theories say everything is through a prism of race, just like the white supremacists say. And therefore, a white reality is different than a black reality. White lived experiences are different than black lived experiences. And they talked about lived experiences, not about reality. Not about truth. There is no truth. Not about reality. There's no one reality. So yes, I think the epistemology makes it almost impossible for them. Almost impossible for them to comprehend a logical argument. An argument that points to reality, that refers to reality. All right, this will be a very novice question, but what is your opinion of reliable statistics to look at, along with the ones that aren't so reliable to compare? There is no simple answer to that. Statistics can be reliable if they're used properly. So the whole thing about statistics is how they're used. And you can, there's a book, very good book, called How to Lie with Statistics. So you can take very valid statistics, very valid statistical methods, and use them to distort what is actually being presented by reality. So there is no, here's the one method that gives you truth, and here's the methods that give you falsehood. And every context requires different statistical tools. And a lot of the way people manipulate statistics is how they choose their data, how they filter their data. Like often in stat, we take out outliers. Well, sometimes when you take out outliers, you completely distort the results. And should you take outliers? When do you take outliers? And it's hard to tell. unless you're a real expert in the field of statistics and of the data source. So a lot of people are really, really good at statistics and their data sucks. Other people are very, very good at accumulating data, but their stat knowledge sucks. Some people are bad at both. And you remember I did this show in the midst of COVID last year. I lost a lot of followers because of this, and I got criticized brutally all over the place for this, where I took a couple of doctors who were claiming certain things about COVID. And whether at the end of the day you agree with the conclusions or not was irrelevant, but they were using statistics really, really, really badly. The doctors, they're smart. They probably had a class in statistics. They don't know how to use it. Statistics is hard. It's problematic. I also have done a number of shows on economic issues like the issue of productivity versus wages, and shown how people use data and stats to distort and pervert reality. No, it was not Dr. Fauci. It was a couple of California doctors who were trying to say that COVID wasn't a big deal. And again, put aside whether you agree or disagree with their conclusions, the way they did it was all wrong. I think it's Michael wrote, Johan, did you see the head of Dalton, New York City, step down? No, I didn't, but that's good, really good. Dalton put out several proposals, such as minority averages for AP. AP doesn't match class average in 3 years, cancel AP classes. Lots of other stuff, too. Parents were not impressed. Good. I mean, that's what has to happen. Parents need to rise up against this bullshit. They should have risen up when these schools were socialist, because most of these parents, particularly in New York, work on Wall Street. But at least now they're rising up. Now, again, what will replace this stuff? Hard to tell. Right? Oh, please like before you leave. Please press the like button before you leave the show today. We've had as high as 140 people live, but only 84 likes. So please don't forget to like the show. It helps with the algorithm. It's very valuable. Also, let me just make this pitch. If you'd like to support the show, and hopefully most of you would like to support the show, you really can support the show with like $2 a month on PayPal through my website. $2 a month, you know, I know for some of you that might be significant, but for most of you it's probably not. And the money, it's not so much the money that is going to make a difference, another $2 a month, but it can if 100 people do it, 1,000 people do it. But it's the number of people who support me financially is important to me. You know, it's one thing to have subscribers and followers and likes and all this stuff. But when you put your money where your mouth is, that means you really value what I do. And I just learned that BAP, Bronze Age pervert, the guy who wants to take us back to the Bronze Age, has 4,000 supporters, financial supporters. Now, his supporters are mainly small ones. You know, my average supporter gives a lot more money than his does, which makes sense. You know, his supporters are kids in their mother's basements playing video games, and graduate students who will never make any money studying political philosophy. My supporters are often successful business people, programmers, you know, just successful human beings who can afford to contribute more. But I should have 4,000 people supporting this show, right? I should have 1,000. So we're at about, it's hard to tell because of Super Chat. Super Chat, I don't keep track of the number of people. Many of you give over and over and over again in Super Chat, and probably my largest monthly supporter is here in Super Chat, right? But my guess is it's around 600, maybe a little over 600, including Super Chat. I really think it should be 1,000. I mean, I want to get a sense that, and you know, you guys can help me because I know many of you listen to the show and don't support, because I know how many people watch the show, how many people watch for hours, but don't support the show on a monthly basis. If all of you did, and I knew there was 1,000, 2,000, whatever the number is, supporters of the show, even if it was $2 a month or $5 a month or $25 a month, whatever the number is, whatever you're comfortable with, whatever you think the value of the show is, that would be huge for me in terms of motivation, in terms of inspiring, in terms of getting a sense that we can change the world. We need numbers. There's no question we need numbers. I mean, I'm sure we have 1,000 true fans. We need 1,000 true fans to show that they're fans, to show that they're true, to show that they get value. And the way to show you get value is to provide value, to provide something in exchange for the trade. And I think if we could get up to 1,000, I'd be super excited, super excited. So those of you who are not yet monthly supporters to the show, please go to yaronbrookshow.com/support and make a monthly contribution, anything from $2 to $500, and a variety of different perks that go along with that. You can do it on Patreon. You can do it on Subscribestar. You can do it on Locals. My preferred place is yaronbrookshow.com/support, but any of those platforms, it doesn't matter to me. It's really, really easy and simple to do. Simple to do. So, MH08 says, I'm subscribed to cooking channels with more than 1 million followers. Yeah, I'm not asking for 1 million. And now, we're getting closer and closer to 25,000 followers. We'll get there sometime in the summer, I think. Now I'm talking about dollars, because I think dollars are more representative of the real value created. And really, I'm not even talking about total dollars. I'm talking about number of people contributing. Number of people contributing. Let's get that number up. Let's get the number of people who give anything from $2 and up a month, every month. Let's get that number up to represent the kind of support this show that you guys think the show deserves. Only if you think it deserves it, of course. I don't care about BAP. It just pisses me off that he has so many people who are willing to give him $1 because he's garbage. Right? I mean, I really wish I had 1 million subscribers and 1 million, financial contributors. That would be a revolution, right? But thank you, Travis. Really, really appreciate that. That's great. Really, I'd love to have 1 million. I'd love to have 10 million. That would be a revolution. That would be changing the world. Right now, we are changing the world. I'd launch a political party. You heard it here. I would run for office if we had 1 million subscribers. Certainly if we had 1 million people paying money into the show. I'd launch a political party and run for office. All right. A friend recently got a new job and real money for the first time in his life. He feels guilty for buying things he wants but doesn't need. What does that even mean? That you want something and you don't need something? I don't know. The things that I want, I typically need. Right? I need a great, stereo system. Because, I need to listen to music and need to listen to music on a good thing, right? So, are there any audiophiles in the audience? I'm curious. If there's any audiophiles, send me an email. I have questions for you. All right. How can I make it clear that living a life you love is a profoundly moral thing? Absolutely. How do you make it? I mean, start asking him what he thinks his purpose of his life is. Why shouldn't he live for his own happiness? And if material things don't make him happy, he shouldn't buy them. But he should really question the values that he lives by. Why he feel guilty? Did he not earn it? Is he not working and creating something? Is he not providing value to his employer? What does need constitute? Do you need an iPhone? Do you need a car? Do you need Netflix? Yes. This idea that you only need food and water, an animal only needs food and water. You are a human being, a cognitive human being. needs that a cognitive human beings has. For example, for knowledge and for entertainment and for art and for leisure. And these are needs. These are needs of a developed cognitive human. We're not animals. I know it's shocking. So, to live means you have to, what option is there? Live well. Remind him he only has one life. Remind him he'll never get a second back. Every pang of guilt is wasted energy. Ask him why he doesn't give all his money away. Because he doesn't really want to. Why? Because he knows that he's more important than the people he's giving the money to. For him. Yes, we are cognitively advanced animals, but we're not. We're separate from animals. Not because God created us thus. I hate to break this to you guys, but there is no God. But because we have free will and cognition. That's what makes us separate from other animals, even though we are still animals. That's the sense. I mean it. All right. Okay, now we're going to go through the non-$20 questions, a lot of them. I'm going to try to do them fast. Was there a sense that the welfare state would be done away with in the 1990s? No, I don't think there was. There was a sense in which it was being reined in a little bit at the margins, but not really. Yeah. James is shocked. Yes, there's no Santa Claus either, or Tooth Fairy. No, I don't think there was a sense that the welfare state would be done away with in the 90s. Reduced a little bit. There was suddenly a momentum towards restructuring certain parts of the welfare state, but not eliminated. There was no force. Nobody was advocating for that with a big cultural presence and any kind of semblance of political power. Longtime listener, the baseball question is my first super chat. I hope to start asking more super chat questions when I can. Thank you for all your shows. Oh, my pleasure. Feel free to keep the super chats coming. Okay, I think this relates to Mouthy. No, I'm not sure who this relates to. Anyway, I'm going to skip that because I don't know who it relates to. People use inequity nowadays versus inequality to justify all this. Can you comment on what it is and why that's wrong? I've commented many times on this. I'll say it again. Inequity is more powerful than inequality because it is a justice issue. Inequity is morality. It's unequitable. It's not fair. It's not just. It's a way to bring justice and morality into the issue of inequality implicitly. And it also suggests treating people unequally in order to achieve equality as an ultimate end. So, for example, if, let's say, blacks are being persecuted and whites are being the persecutors, justice demands that they be treated unequally. Whites should be punished and blacks should be rewarded in order to bring it into balance. So the whole point of inequity is to relate to morality and justice and what's right, and what's right. Stefan, thank you. That is a very generous contribution. I grew up in the 90s and remember a lot of environmentalism, an implicit anti-capitalist message, but not so much race talk. There was no race talk. Rodney King and O.J. Simpson aside, in a lot of areas of the culture, racism seems to be getting better, but maybe I'm wrong. Seemed to be getting better. Yes, absolutely. I mean, the whole emphasis on race is a new phenomenon. To a large extent, it's always been as an undercurrent. Black intellectuals felt resentment. Black politicians constantly hyped on the victimhood issue. But it wasn't they still, for the most part, I think, the ideal was a colorblind society. The thing they were striving for was colorblindness. They weren't making a big issue about race. They were making a big issue about racism when it existed, or sometimes when it didn't. And they were certainly making a big issue about altruism and about the need to the victimhood mentality, the moral claim that people with need had on everybody else. But race was not a big deal until, I think, the Obama presidency. And the Obama presidency did two things, in my view. It brought out white racism. A lot of whites resented Obama for being a leftist and for being black and for combining those two. And you started to see that a little bit in the Tea Party, and that morphed into a greater hostility towards immigrants and a greater hostility towards minorities more generally, and a hatred of Trump, a hatred of Obama to a large extent because of what he did, but not only because of what he did. And then I think, at the same time, black intellectuals felt emboldened and betrayed at the same time. Emboldened by the fact that there was a black president, betrayed by the fact that he wasn't leftist enough for their taste, wasn't enough of a critical race theorist, wasn't enough of an egalitarian, didn't do enough to so-called help them. So they became emboldened. And then what happened is Donald Trump got elected. And Donald Trump played the race card all the time throughout his presidency. He played with it. He never came out explicitly, but he constantly harped on genes and those people. Anyway, I've got a long list of quotes. And that did the same thing to both sides. On one hand, it emboldened the white racists, the white nationalists of all types and kinds, but also people who normally would not affiliate with white supremacists and white racists felt a little bit more inclined to that view because it seemed to be legitimized at least somewhat by Trump, who kept saying it's all about genes. And on the flip side, it got the black intellectuals who were now emboldened by Obama felt under siege by Trump, and that just blew out all their inhibitions. And they became more fanatical, more radical, more extreme, worse and worse and worse. And they brought it out into the open, whereas in the past they had hidden. Now, it's also an intellectual evolution. I mean, intersectionality is 20, 25 years old, and it's slowly filtered into the universities. Critical race theory is 20 years old. Critical theory is even older. It's 50, 60 years old. So all of these things developed slowly, and the crescendo was the last 5 years or so, where all this comes to the forefront. And suddenly, Black Lives Matter brought it all to the front and center. It made heroes of the so-called anti-racist and white fragility and all that. While it's been going on everywhere for years now, Black Lives Matter kind of brought it all to the forefront of the debate. And you can see that these schools, for example, that we talked about earlier today, they introduced all of this new so-called curriculum post Black Lives Matter. So they were influenced by what they perceived as the moral high ground that the Black Lives Matter movement captured. But they captured that because the groundwork had been laid for decades now by the collectivists, the subjectivists, the critical theory, the postmodernists, all these anti-reason, anti-individualism forces. It didn't come out of nowhere. It's a capitalization on all these philosophical trends going back to Kant, but accumulating this time through postmodernism and critical theory, and then embedded into intersectionality and critical race theory. So we are now where it's all out in the open. It's not being hidden anymore. And that's the post, as Stephanie says, the post-BLM period. All right, back to the Super Chats. How do you think Senator Lee and Cruz rationalize supporting this when they should know better? Power. I don't know about Lee. I had a better opinion about him, but Cruz, all about power. He'll say, do whatever he thinks will get him the votes, wherever he thinks the Republican Party, the winds are blowing. He became a complete, after he was violently opposed to Trump, and Trump called his, accused his father of being, I guess, a Castro spy. I can't remember, being involved somehow in the Kennedy assassination or something like that, and just treated Cruz like really badly, and Cruz, hated on Trump and then he completely flipped because he realized that that's where the Republican Party really is, and he wants power. Lee might be the same thing. Lee might be worried about a Trump-like challenger in Utah and wants to solidify his Trump/conservative agenda. Yeah, MH8 says we're nowhere near the end of the BLM period. I agree, we're nowhere near it. But at least now we're seeing voices raised against it. We're seeing parents speak up, we're seeing teachers speak up, we're seeing Barry Weiss and other intellectuals, many of them on the left, on the center left, speaking up against these ideas. And that is important. Why would I be excited about producing a means to an end that I don't enjoy as an end in itself? Only works if you happen to love the challenge, that it isn't just there, but still has to be produced. Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't understand the question. You should integrate means and ends. You should enjoy them both. Sometimes the means are difficult, but you have to want the ends. Otherwise, why would you do the means if you don't want the ends? What's the means for? If the end is not a value, why even do it? Why do the work? So you have to start with a value and work towards a value. And hopefully the work is enjoyable as well. And you're enjoying the process, enjoying the fact that you're building something towards an end. Thank you, Ron. This episode makes me so angry. I think this is last time. Hard to listen. These thugs are attacking my heroes, and there's little more I can do about it. Yes, absolutely. That's the conservatives attacking businessmen. Horrific. Horrific. Don't be a Republican. Doesn't mean you should be a Democrat. Don't be a Republican. That's the thing you should do. Don't affiliate yourself with either political party. In the deer hunter, in the Russian roulette scene, where is free will versus determinism? How does the person know the next shot? It's totally random. There is no free will once you exercise your free will to pull the trigger. The free will is exercised in the willingness to pull the trigger. You don't have to pull the trigger. Put the gun on the table and walk away. Once you're pulling the trigger, it's completely determined, the outcome. So free will doesn't mean you control the world out there. It means you control your decisions, your actions. Don't pull the trigger. So I guess I'm not sure what the confusion is there. Oops, I just deleted the next question. I was watching the old TV show Columbo. I thought it was pretty fun to watch. What do you think? Yeah, those were fun shows. Clever, funny, smart. I mean, good shows. Good shows. Columbo's a great character. Why isn't health and fitness talked about more in Objectivism? The ultimate man makes his surrounding beautiful. Your own body should be no exception. Yeah, to the extent that that's possible. I mean, we don't all have beautiful bodies. Bodies cannot easily be sculpted, even if you work hard at it. Genes play a big role. Some of us are born with weird shapes. Some of us add muscles easier or in the right places. Other people have a much harder time adding muscle. Some of us are born with pretty faces. Some of us are born with ugly faces. It's just a fact. But yes, a big part of it is you should strive to be you're not as healthy as you can be. And you should strive to be as beautiful as you can be. But and there is no mind-body dichotomy, but that means you don't emphasize the body more than the mind either. So it's an issue partially of time, right? It's partially an issue of time. Given that you've got to create a character, you've got to build a soul. Right? And you've also, and there's limited time, and you've also want to create as nice a thing. But look, people value beauty differently, right? So for example, I noticed this when I did the interview with Lex and Michael Malice. Michael Malice dresses to perfection. He dresses beautifully. I don't. I don't care about clothes. It's just not a value to me. Beautiful clothes. I don't put effort, I don't put emphasis on all beauty equally. I mainly work out because I want to look okay, but mainly because I think I want to be healthy. I know some of you love this shirt, which I wear often because I have two of them. But I don't, I'm short sleeves. I don't have any jewelry, never wore any jewelry. I wear the same shirts over and over again. I love to see paintings on the wall. I love beautiful women. I like to look at beautiful things. I don't spend a lot of time. I mean, I'm much more interested in the beauty in here, inside. I have, horrible teeth. I've got a root canal now as a consequence, I guess. I'm not going to go through the effort and the expenditure and the time and struggle to do whitening or to, for example, put on braces. It's just not worth my effort, not worth the time and effort to do it, because that, there are a lot of different things that you're trying to achieve beauty in, and you've got to prioritize them. And that is not high on my priority list. And again, I try to look good within the limitations my genes have provided me. My wife certainly likes to look good. She's gotten great genes for that. But again, it's everybody has to make choices about allocation of time in terms of where you put it. Would never spend 2 hours a day in the gym. It's just too much time. It doesn't make any sense to me. There's too many things to do. There are too many other things to do. There's too much of beauty other than that. But in terms of people spending time in the gym, trying to look good, yeah, that's great. That's great. Plus, I also think that people who are overly muscular don't look good. There's something artificial about that. What about a blue shirt? I love blue shirts. Blue is my favorite color. I like dark blue. Dark blue. When I was in high school, I had one wall in my bedroom painted dark blue. I loved it. My wife won't let me have a dark blue wall in the house. I'm going to have a dark green wall in the house, like we can do a green screen soon. Soon. All right, $20 questions. We got a couple of them. I was in the Marines and I miss the action sometimes. I get that. Sometimes it's hard to reconcile the fact civilian life is so boring in comparison. Do you have any advice? Yes. Don't associate, try not to associate boredom or lack of boredom with physical action. That is, I don't think civilian life should be boring. Make your life not boring by discovering areas that interest you. I'm almost never bored. I'm never bored. There's so many things to do. There's so many great books to read. I mean, my biggest problem in life is that I don't have enough time to listen to all the podcasts. I don't have enough time to read all the Substacks. I certainly don't have enough time to read all the books. I don't have enough time to listen to all the music, investigate all the artwork, and do my work, and spend time with my wife, and eat at great restaurants, and live, and work out. I just don't have enough time. There's so many interesting, fabulous, amazing things, people, stuff out there in the world. How do you do it? And I don't have enough time to return all my emails. Absolutely. I'm known for not replying to emails. Who has time? So you get bored reading programming docs, so try to find a job that requires you to read fewer programming docs, or find a job that makes it interesting. And find activities that maybe are not as adrenaline-filling as what you did in the army, but that stimulate your mind. I love traveling. Right? So find things and experiment and try different things, but give yourself a chance to read a Victor Hugo novel. Give yourself a chance. You'll be bored in the beginning, but try to get into it. Right? Bodhi says 2 hours in the gym is excessive anyway. HIT gets your fitness sometimes like quickly. Resistance training is also good. Yeah, I mean, I've done HIT, particularly HIT resistance, where you lift very heavy weights slowly. I do some of that with body weight. Yes, I think 2 hours in the gym is excessive, but to be a real bodybuilder, you have to do a couple of hours in the gym. I believe in being as fit as health necessitates. You want to look good, you want to get rid of excess fat, within reason. I do not, I hate tattoos. Sorry, Charlie, but I just don't like tattoos. Stephanie has 4 tattoos. I don't like them. I like the human skin. I don't know. I think it's also permanent. You can't change your mind. Most people overdo it. There's too much. I just like, if you're going to paint, there's a canvas for that. I don't think your body should be a canvas. No, tattoos of Ayn Rand are spooky, weird. That's weird. And there's pain involved, which I'm very much against pain. Very much against pain. All right, I remember learning more than once in school about triangle factory fire. The lesson is government needs to enforce fire exit, sprinkler systems, etc. Is that the role of government? How would a free market deal with it? No, it's not the role of government. And the free market would deal with it by insurance companies having to pay all those claims, and therefore insisting that buildings that get insurance have to abide by certain safety regulations. Otherwise, the insurance company won't insure them. And people may be insisting that a company, that a place have on the door some kind of evidence that they have insurance. Otherwise, they won't. So it really, the market depends on people being responsible. Not that they're not going to be bad, irresponsible people, but the responsible and good people hold everybody else accountable. So in a good society, you wouldn't go to a club that didn't demonstrate that they had insurance. And by demonstrating they have insurance, that there was an insurance inspector and they inspected the place and that it's okay. You don't need government for that. And if you go into a place without worrying about that, without thinking about it, without inspecting it, then you suffer the consequences. Now, think about it. No club owner wants to have his place burned down and have people killed and have to pay off a penalty and whatever. And maybe if they were negligent, they would be sued for negligence. Maybe if they were, grossly negligent, maybe that's a criminal. Maybe that's criminal. Maybe once your place burns down, people are hurt, and you were grossly negligent, maybe then you would be criminally liable. So you can create incentives for people to do the right thing when there's a rights violation, right? Grossly negligence is borderline is a rights violation. So you can create you. No, Daniel, you can't donate today to have it towards tomorrow. The whole point of tomorrow is the excitement and the thrill of having money coming in and getting to $1,000. And we've got tomorrow also, John will be on the show, I think, and on the chat, and he'll be monitoring. So he needs to see that $1,000 was raised, otherwise he won't match it, right? So, look, you cannot create a society in which there is no risk. You cannot create a society in which there are never any fires, in which nobody ever gets hurt. Oh, did I miss your $25 question? Type it in here in the bottom in the chat, and I'll do it. I'm sorry if I missed it. So voluntary transactions will, voluntary insistence on people taking responsibility for their actions will do a much better job at creating a safe environment. But it won't be zero risk. Nothing is in life. Nothing is in life. Why do you think of all of Ayn Rand's stories have a trial scene? A trial scene. You got to spell right, because otherwise it comes across. I was thinking, trail. What's a trail scene? A road trip? What does he mean? Trial scene. Well, because I think she has a lot of respect for the idea of a justice system. The trials are set up not just to evaluate the particular case, but to evaluate a philosophy. The way she sets it up, both in Reardon's case and in Rourke's case, the trial is a trial of the ideas in the culture. It's a great way to dramatize the conflict of the ideas. Remember, she also wrote a play about a trial, the night of January the 16th. So it's a great way to concretize and dramatize a conflict of ideas. And that's what she was trying to do. That's why she has trials, not in all her books, but in her two most famous ones. If someone is having a medical emergency in an airplane, should the pilot land? Isn't that sacrificing the lives of all the other passengers who have a destination to reach? Yes, but it is an emergency. So in emergencies, sometimes you have to make either or decisions. And part of the contract that the airline has with you as a passenger, implicit, is that if you have a heart attack in a plane, they will land and try to get you to hospital quickly. And if you're a customer on an airplane that somebody's going to have a heart attack on, you're going to be late. So it's a contractual agreement, implicit or explicit, but everybody understands it, everybody knows it, that I think that makes sense. It encourages people to fly. People wouldn't want to fly suddenly above a certain age if they thought, oh, the airline doesn't care about me. Imagine if there was an airline that said, oh, we don't land in emergencies. If you have a heart attack, you die on the plane. We don't care, because we are going to get the rest of the passengers to their place. Would that encourage people to fly or discourage people to fly? So it's really a contractual issue. It's not an issue. It's a contractual issue. If you don't have to fly, or you could start an airline that has a different contract. And not every contract needs to be written out. Many of the contracts we live under are implicit contracts. But we all know that they're there. It seems we're rapidly returning to the 70s with our attitude towards education, policing, and growing welfare state as we return to pre-Reagan formation of the state, reaction to poverty. Yes, we're returning to pre-Reagan, but worse, because we're adding to it racism, left and right. here, Rob C's question was the next question I was getting to. So sorry, I had you retype it in, but it's the next question on my sheet. I didn't mark it as a $20 question, so I apologize for that. I started pushing back against critical theory at work, and colleagues called me up to say I should know when the tide is rising, as in, better just go with it because the change is inevitable. Does he have a point? No. I mean, you have to make the decision at the end of the day about whether you want to risk alienation at work or even losing your job. But the fact is that if everybody takes the position of bad ideas arising, therefore I'm going to stay quiet, then bad ideas will always rise and nobody will ever speak up against them and nobody will be in opposition to them and they win. The only way to fight bad ideas is to talk about them. It's to argue against them. It's to disagree with them. It's to object to them. That's what having integrity means. And that's what fighting for the future means. So he might be right in terms of this is the rising tide, but it's definitely the rising tide if you stay quiet. The only chance to stop it, the only chance to prevent it from being a rising tide is to speak up against it. Now, Shali says, you should let a few F-bombs out sometimes. The kids love it. I was going to make a tattoo comment there, but I held back. Yeah, but it's exactly the kind of kids I'm not that interested in attracting. How many of my supporters would stop contributing funds if I did that? Now, Daniel would increase his support if I said therefore a few times. But, it's not me. It's not that I don't swear when the occasion demands it, but it's almost, I know it's not you. I was giving you a hard time, Charlie. It's not that I don't swear, but I swear in private. That's where I think swearing is appropriate. Right? And it might come out one day because I get so worked up and so pissed off that I might swear. But, yep. The kid made two interesting points during your debate the other night. One, how come every country on the planet has some amount of welfare distribution policies if they are obvious failures? Because of altruism. I mean, that's pretty straightforward. Altruism demands that they redistribute wealth. Altruism demands that, and altruism is the one thing nobody challenges. So it's not because they work or they don't work. How come everybody has a mixed economy even though capitalism works better? Works by what standard? Not by the standard of altruism. By the standard of altruism, redistribution is a must. The second point he makes is Atlas Shrugged will never happen in real life because empirical evidence shows the capitalist class doesn't mind being leached off of. Well, you don't know that Atlas Shrugged is not happening in the sense that there are people who in 2008-9 it used to be called going galt. People go galt all the time. People reduce their production all the time because they've had enough of being exploited. And yeah, maybe, but that's Ayn Rand addressed that. It's called sanction of the victim. And someday, it's all about ideas, guys. It's all about ideas. Someday, the class of producers, not the capital, the class of producers will realize that they're being used, exploited, sacrificed, and they'll start standing up for themselves. That someday will happen. Everyone ridicules this ideology, but no one is advocating a positive alternative and getting that into teacher colleges. How do you clone Lisa Van Dam? Well, I mean, it's not, we need many, many more teachers teaching good stuff. But look, the largest Montessori school network, and they're not just Montessori schools in terms of primary, in terms of kindergarten. They're developing high schools and they're developing primary school curriculum. So from pre-K through high school. One of the largest school networks in the country is run by an objectivist. There's no critical race theory in in those schools. And they're all over the country, primarily in Montessori level, but they have ambitions to go all the way up to high school. In some places, they have high school. And it's called Higher Ground Education. You can look them up. And they've got dozens, I think, or a couple of dozen maybe, of objectivists working there. Lots of good teachers. And they're not going to teach this crap. They're not going to. So the one area in which I'm optimistic is our ability to influence education, because I know the people involved. Van Damme is one school, very limited. This is a network, and it's growing significantly. I can't remember how many hundreds or thousands of teachers they have. This is huge. Now, they're not all objectivists, but they're not CRT. Well, you should change your Montessori. If your son's Montessori is doing CRT, then get them out of that Montessori school and go to a Montessori school that doesn't have that. And again, look up Higher Ground Education, find a Montessori school run by them, and they won't have CRT, and they're all over the country now. Is this the end of free speech in America? No, because in a sense of a legal institution, our court system is pretty good at protecting free speech. Culturally, it's a real problem in terms of free speech. Culturally, this is inhibiting people's ability to speak, willingness to speak. This topic is why a lot of us weren't apologists for Trump as we were accused, but saw him as the one and only ones pushing back on leftist momentum. Yeah, but quite the opposite. Critical race theory. You see, when the person opposing the left's momentum is just as bad as them in many regards, certainly epistemologically, then that's not pushing back. That's pouring gasoline on the fire. That's making it worse. And there's no accident that during Trump, this was far, CRT and all this stuff became much bigger, much stronger, much more influential. Yeah, if there was a president who was actually pushing back on leftist momentum, wow, I would definitely support a president like that. But he wasn't. He was encouraging leftist momentum. On every important issue, he either agreed with the left, or the disagreement was minor, or the way he disagreed only emboldened them. And look, it wasn't me who lost the House of Representatives to the left. It wasn't me who lost the Senate to the left. It wasn't me who lost the presidency to the left. That was Donald Trump. So I don't know where he was pushing back. It seems to me that he was encouraging it. He spurred it. He made it bigger. He made it more forceful. He emboldened them. And some of you were out and out apologists. Some of you supported him as the least of all evils as you saw it. Granted. But some of you were apologists in the sense of justifying everything that he did. So not providing a rational voice to back him up, to kind of give a rational substance to the better things that he was doing in terms of pushing back on the left. You embraced him and you loved him and you supported everything that he said. And that's who I was talking about. And of course, Trump emboldened the racists of the right, and I just explained how that emboldened the racists of the left. So no, Trump was the problem together with the left. He did not push back on leftist momentum. He encouraged, poured gasoline on leftist momentum and encouraged it. And the result is you've got a Senate, House, and President who are leftists. You've got critical race theory rampant in the culture. I mean, look at the results. Look at the results. Don't blame me. Look at the results. Iran gained 40 pounds first year on HIT. What? I've never gained 40 pounds in my life. I've never been 40 pounds away from my high school weight. I was in great shape in high school. And as Danielle says, trillions and trillions more in debt. And he lost. He lost. I mean, it drives me nuts. This is the guy who handed over everything to the left. It helped me realize that external reality is made up of only of concretes. It helped me to realize that external reality is made only of concretes. Commas are needed. It took that for me to think like Aristotle and not Plato. Yes, that, absolutely. You've got to recognize reality. And that reality is concrete. There are no ideas in reality. How much do I weigh? How much do I weigh? I'm not sure why these things interest you, but I weigh 180 pounds. I don't care. 180 pounds. And I probably weighed 170 something in high school. So I'm not that far. I definitely like to lose, I don't know. I definitely like to be in mid-70s, 174. That's the weight I'd like to be. But more importantly, is I've got a bad back. I've been injured many times in my back. I've had 3 back surgeries. It's, what are you going to do? You're trying to calculate my BL whatever. They want my height. Sexual orientation is next. And what surgeries, what diseases have I had, and what medication am I on? You're starting to sound like my doctor. Enough. This is silly. Yeah, I could lose 5 to 10 pounds. That would be good. Why do you think Iran has gotten so entrenched? Why do you think Iran? Where did I get that from? Why do you think people have gotten so entrenched in their political side, even when things they disliked yesterday, they like when their side sticks to it? All right, you're saving dollars for tomorrow. Thank you. Oh, that's tribalism. We've talked about this a lot on the show over the last 5 years. It's tribalism. People don't trust their own judgment. They don't trust their own ideas. They don't trust their ability to think for themselves. They've been taught that their reason is incompetent. They've been taught that they shouldn't think for themselves, that individualism is bad. Right? And somebody says that to blame the left is TDS. I haven't been called TDS in a long time. Yeah, I mean, you're right. It's TDS because I said this stuff started under Obama. I said that 15 minutes ago. And it got worse under Trump. Now, you can reject that or not, but it got worse under Trump. And I didn't make up that the Democrats won the House, the Senate, and the presidency under Trump. So, but, even after this loser lost, you can't criticize him. TDS means Trump derangement syndrome. You can't criticize him. Some of you are still fixated in a kind of lobotomized Trump syndrome. You can't think for yourself. Trump is God. All right, why did we get to Trump? God, because people ask me. All right, guys. Thank you. Tomorrow, we have got a $1,000 match, a challenge for all of you, for me. We will go as long as it's needed to get to the $1,000. So I guess some of you can withhold the money so that I go longer. But shorter is better. The quicker we could get to over $1,000, that would be fun. That would be even more fun. Usually we do $1,000 in about an hour, so it should be pretty quick. After all, we did do $6,000 on New Year's Eve. That was a lot of fun. That was pretty good. This is where I don't have to use swear words. Trump is not worth using the swear words. I mean, Trump trolls are not worth using the swear words. So here's a question for you as we leave. You can leave this in the chat. What should be the topic tomorrow, given the big Super Chat match? What should be the topic tomorrow, given the big Super Chat match? Everything is on the table. What should I do? The verdict comes out of Minnesota. We could do that, although I haven't followed the trial closely. China virus, ugh, that's boring. I've talked about COVID nonstop forever. Atheism. Ugh, why? Atheism, jeez. Swear words. Labor unions, cancel culture. Anything but George Floyd. Look, we're trying to attract a lot of people, so we get raised $1,000. So don't think about what you want to hear. Think about what would generate the most interest so we can raise $1,000. Snow and cold in Denver. High intensity training. Amateur philosophers trying to find their place in the world. What is an amateur philosopher? I don't know what that even means. David says I should talk about sex. What should be the title? Like sex in the age of critical race theory? Racism on the right. Yeah, Richard is just being facetious because he comes on here to be facetious. That's his purpose in life. National debt, I did that. Nobody cares. Nobody cares about the national debt. How religion is fundamentally anti-life. Would that attract a lot of people? Businessman attraction to collectivism. Whoever solves cancel culture will get those million followers. You can't solve cancel culture. You have to fight it. There's no solving it. And you have to fight it the right way. And people are not interested in that. Alexandria likes to criticize me for the plethora of things I deserve to be criticized for. The latest idiocy by Tucker Carlson, whatever that is, I could just show any clip by Tucker Carlson that would qualify. Property rights of Native Americans. Ooh, that's an interesting one. To Viagra or not, if you need to, absolutely. Sex sells. Teach us taxes. Teach us taxes. No, I'm not an accountant. Why is a garbage philosophy like nihilism so popular? Oh my God, all right. Secretary would tie in with the sex topic. True. I still haven't seen Secretary, but it's on. I'm going to. The return of Jordan Peterson and how he has gotten more religious. Not surprising at all. Michaela Peterson had a mobster and ex-cop on her show, very good. Okay, I'm not sure why having a mobster on the show is very good. How to rationally fill in your tax returns. I don't want to go to jail, Apollo. I do not want to go to... The only rational way to fill in your tax returns is to fill them out in a way where you owe as little taxes as possible without going to jail. One line answer to that one. Why atheism is a hollow word. It's not. It's a great word. Don't listen to objectivist Pokemon. I don't know what that is. 7 rules of life. All right? Solutions that people can engage in for moving towards capitalism accountability. Talk. You know, riots and vaccine hysteria usually bring the views. Also cats. Cats. I don't hate cats, but I don't like cats. I'll do $500 if you pick labor unions. Yeah, okay, I'll talk about labor unions. I'll talk about labor unions tomorrow, among other things. But it'll be one of the topics. Daniel, I expect $500 tomorrow. Something critiquing the right. You usually get a lot of people when you do that. I'll critique right-wing labor unions. No, I'm kidding. But I will do labor unions. Labor unions is a good topic. Teacher unions, a great topic. Why you need philosophy to live and what you are doing wrong. What you are doing wrong. Who, me or you? Who's you? Give advice to Boston Celtics management on roster moves. That would be good. That I should do. I should definitely do that. Although picking up this latest guy who they signed was not bad. Amari Parker. Optimism or not after COVID? No optimism. Can't end well. Movies about welfare. Don't know. Don't be an Irwin Schiff. I don't know Irwin. Daniel, you should be done. $500 tomorrow. David Cameron lobbying scandal. Yeah, there's not a lot to talk about there. Debunking TV statistics. Map out how we move from altruistic communitarianism to individualist freedom. An ex-monster is now motivated speaker. Mobster is now motivational speaker. That's kind of grisly and weird. Passion of Ayn Rand movie, never talking about that. Tell the Beirut story, you'll have to pay me. I told you a long time ago, you pay me, I tell the Beirut story. Entertainment culture, more on what Trump is up to today. I don't want to talk about Trump. Although, if I put Trump in the title, I think I'll get a lot of views. Why sex sells, pleasure in the face of altruism. That's a good topic, actually. I like that topic. Yeah, I like that topic. Why sex sells in the context of Christianity. I like that. What about a show on Rail? I don't know what Rail is. Review 12 Rules of Life. I'd have to read it. Poetry, Burton Braley. I love Burton Braley's poetry. If your one was a life coach like Napoleon Hill, I am. Isn't that what I do all the time? Isn't that what you get from me? Let's be honest, you guys will listen to whatever the topic Yaron chooses. All right? Talk about immigration as a value. All right? Nobody will show up. Or if they will, they won't give me a dime. Not give me a dime. Psycho comes and he disagrees with everything I say, but he still comes and listens. No, Psycho's okay sometimes. You doing wrong is for the audience. Sorry, my English. I'm not native, okay? Smoke a bunch of pot for the episode tomorrow. It's 4:20. I think that will push the viewers here. So if I advertise that I'm smoking pot during the show, then we'll get a lot of views. Can you debunk a lot of second thoughts videos? Yes, but they're boring. I'll try to do it. They're all the same. The bunkie is the same. Owen Schiff was the one who went to jail. He's, Peter Schiff's father. Daniel, $500 labor union history and impact on wages. I'll do some of that, but I'll do labor unions. I'm not sure I'll do the history. I don't know that I know the history well enough. Okay, looking for the cool objectivists. I'm not sure where the cool objectivists are. 10 concepts that are leading you to the death and how to fix them. Ooh, I like that. 10 concepts that are leading you to death and how to fix them. All right, I'm going to copy that one down. So that'll be my, like Yaron's 12. We should do Yaron's 12 rules of life. Do you think people show up for Yaron's 12 rules of life? I could do 12 rules, I think, by tomorrow. Yaron secretly likes people who disagree with him. Some of them. Do a cooking show. You mean boil eggs? Because that's the only thing I know how to cook. Boiled eggs. And I'm not even sure how long you leave them in the boiling water. So I'm not even sure I can do boiling eggs. I can't do a cooking show. Never cooked in my life. Never will. Personal objectives to anecdotes. Nobody likes that. Yippee. They showed up to 10 Commandments. There are now 24 rules to life. As long as you don't associate with the 12-step AA program. I could do an objectivist 12-step program. References to Ayn Rand in movies. Nobody will show up. All right. Thank you, guys. You've been a lot of help. I mean that seriously. Thank you for the support. It was a good Super Chat day. Really appreciate it. Please get the word out there that we're doing a $1,000 match tomorrow. I'll post it on Twitter. And I've already critiqued Andrew Cleven's critique of Rand. I've already done that. There's a video. I think there are 2 videos of me critiquing Clavin's critique of Ayn Rand. It's he basically strawmans everything. But he's a religionist. He's a religionist thug, unthinker. So it's not hard to critique it. All right. Thanks, guys. I will see you all tomorrow, 8 o'clock, right here on YouTube. Super Chat challenge, $1,000. Bye, everybody.